My
We're live. What?
Oh, I said, is my internet bad?
You're fine.
Okay.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be, wherever you are in this great, wonderful world that we call home. Welcome to Cross Examinations, the daily, roughly daily, usually daily, not on Sundays, daily show where I and sometimes my guest, Doug TenNapel, will take questions from the audience referring to and dealing with faith, the Bible, Christianity in general. Those are basically the topics. And Doug, say hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm Doug TenNapel. I'm in my studio animating Bigfoot Bill.
Animating? Do tell.
Yeah, I should be drawing a comic book, but I'm animating Bigfoot Bill for a free game we're giving away.
Oh my.
It's killing me. It's gonna kill me.
You know what's killing me? I left my coffee in the house.
Okay, jump in. I'll take over.
All right.
So Mike lives in San Diego, and I'm coveting his house right now because San Diego is one of my favorite places in the whole world. You can see in the reflection in that window back there, the beauty of San Diego. He can walk outside in a tank top. I'm out in Tennessee right now, hiding in my studio from the winter that is coming. And before that, during the summer, I was hiding in my studio to keep from getting eaten by all the bugs in the air. So Mike lives in paradise. So that's the lesson on San Diego. It's my favorite place in the world. It's where I met my wife. It's where I went to college. It's where I got my first successes in animation and video games. We used to body surf, eat the best Mexican food in the world. And just you'd go outside and you could just jog or play all day. The air is so clean and beautiful. The people are friendly. It's a great mix of just kind of, there's a funky art community, but there's also normal people and military people. I dig San Diego. It is America's finest city. And so I'm animating. I'm actually fake animating in Photoshop. So I'm animating what I call animating blind, meaning I can't test any of the animation to see if it's working. I'm just drawing it as best as I can guess, and then I give it to the programmer. And they throw it in the game. And usually it works pretty well. So I've done enough animation where I can animate pretty blind now. At least that's what they call it, is blind animation. So anyways, I like these Bible talks. And of course, I'm here drawing, so I won't have access to a Bible, which is always good when you're doing a Bible talk, is to not have access to a Bible.
Well, hopefully you have it memorized.
Yeah, I know all the big picture stuff. I know that's about it.
All right, let's see. Let me go see who is in here.
Our people.
Our people.
So Ethan, I think Ethan's going to have us on tonight.
Ethan's going to do a what now?
I think Ethan's going to have us on tonight. He's stirring up a controversy between us. So it's going to be fun.
Between you and I?
Yeah, between us. It has to do with the Meg. So.
Oh.
It's going to be good.
What exactly is the controversy?
Well, he has discovered something is all. I don't want to go into it here. I'm just saying I think he's going to have a show tonight. Can you do it?
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Oh my gosh, my computer is not loading the page.
Oh, so you can't see the chat.
Can't see the chat.
Did you turn everything else off? That's
right. Well, let's start here. Yesterday, after I left the chat, somebody said I was referring to the thief on the cross and how I guess the question was, do you have to
be baptized to go to heaven?
No, do you have to be a Bible literalist?
Oh.
To be saved? And I was using the example of the thief on the cross.
Yeah.
That's always the go-to. It's like, look, you believe in Christ, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff is stuff you work on.
Yeah, that is true. And the Bible even warns of adding to the words of the Bible. You know, there's curses to you. So that, I believe that includes us adding theology that isn't in there. So
Sure.
I'm always very careful of, if the Bible says, say, someone is saved by Jesus, and I say, no, you can only be saved if you're against abortion. I wouldn't say that. Or you're only saved if you're,
Joe,
you know,
get in the house.
Yeah. Or you're only saved if you're if you're a Bible literalist, for instance. That's another example of a line I would never draw. I don't feel like we have the ability or the freedom in the scriptures to do that.
Right. Right. So Sketchbook says the thief believed in his heart of Christ's claims because his innocence and his lack of defensive actions towards his accusers, also his kingship, he addressed Jesus as a king.
Yeah. And there's too many ignorant people in the Bible that are clearly saved.
Yeah.
Like they have weird theology. You have those young Christians that are like, they won't eat meat sacrificed to animals, and Paul will. So you can tell there's a diversity even among those believers, and a tolerance.
Wait, when did Paul eat meat sacrificed to idols?
Let me find it. Oh, brother. Okay.
Oh, is that in the scripture where he says, I become all things to all men?
No.
Yeah, because it was Paul who said that, you know, as a believer or as a Gentile, all, you know, basically don't fornicate and don't eat meat sacrificed to idols.
Yeah, okay, well, that's one place where he says it, but then it's weird because later he says, this is 1 Corinthians 8:1-11, when he's dealing with the young, the weaker brothers. It's the weaker brother verse.
Right, right.
Okay.
Right. So you don't do it as not to stumble others.
Yeah, yeah. So he clearly says that he has the freedom. Let me find it real quick. Oh man,
because like I won't eat halal food.
Really?
Yeah, because they sacrifice it to Allah, who is a false god. It's ritually sacrificed to Allah.
Yeah, that's if what I eat causes my brother or sister to fall into sin, I will never eat meat again. So
right.
that's the caveat, is that you do it to serve others.
Well, that's eating meat. That's not necessarily like meat sacrifice unto idols.
Here's verse 7. But not everyone possesses this knowledge. Some people are still so accustomed to idols that when they eat sacrificed food, they think of it as having been sacrificed to a god. And since their conscience is weak, it is defiled. But food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do.
Sorry.
Be careful, however, this is verse 9, that the exercise of your rights does not become a stumbling block to the weak. That's very interesting for our political times. That you can have the right to say the F word. That doesn't mean you should, you know,
right?
Because it might make the weak stumble. For if someone with a weak conscience sees you with all your knowledge eating in an idol's temple, won't that person be emboldened to eat what is sacrificed to idols? So the weak brother or sister for whom Christ died is destroyed by your knowledge. So our freedom and our salvation, someone else may not have that freedom because they may not be up to that level of understanding yet that you're not sinning.
Hey, Doug,
so I don't
learned something today.
Yeah, so I don't see him in there saying that he ate meat. I thought that he actually said that he ate the meat. So it's something like, though it's not an offense to me, because they're weaker, it is defiled. But that's not what I'm reading now. So I might have, it's very easy that I remembered it wrong, which is why, ladies and gentlemen, you should read the scripture. And I've been reading the scripture my whole life.
And you learn something new every day.
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? How you can be reading the scripture, same scripture you've read 20 times.
Yeah. And I'd have sworn that verse was in there, and it's not.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that, you know, because of whatever particular circumstance, when you read it on a certain day in a certain circumstance, you notice it for the first time. You notice something about it for the first time that speaks to you, and that's the Holy Spirit. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
Eggs. No one's offended by eggs, right? Except for vegans, and who cares about them?
Yeah, vegans don't count. I offend them all the time.
With gusto. Yeah, this page, my page won't open. Weird.
So you can't read the chat?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to reload it.
I would read the chat, but I'm working, so
Oh,
I gotta keep moving pixels here.
I love eggs, man.
Yeah, me too.
Well, as long as that's loading, let me go back. There was a comment posted.
Okay.
That says, kind of a long comment.
Oh man.
Slavery in biblical times was a very different institution compared to what it became by the time of the Civil War. Back in those days, there were no banks, no credit cards. There weren't government welfare programs. There was rarely a reliable form of currency. If you wanted to buy something like a piece of land, you would meet with the landowner, make arrangement for your payment, but there's still no currency and no banks to give you a loan. Well, that's not true. There was currency, but the currency was usually like gold.
Or denarii, or
there was no paper currency. And there were lines of credit. People could give you lines of credit. But I get what he's saying here. And it's true. I mean, I've used that argument myself that you know, biblical slavery is not the same thing as racial slavery.
Exactly. Biblical slavery is indentured servitude.
Yeah, but that's not to. You can't say that throughout history there was no other racial slavery. You know, it was very common for one people to enslave another people. And
well, yeah, I mean, even right up to modernity, people still, there supposedly are more slaves today.
Yeah.
Than there were in the times of the Civil War.
Killing me, dude.
Look at Mike parenting.
JoJo's my special needs kid who has a hard time being disciplined.
Oh, good man. Special needs. Ground him.
Yeah.
So, but it is true that those scriptures were written to a Semitic wandering tribe where they did not always have proper jails. So how do you punish people like for murder or whatever bad thing they did? How would you, the best thing you could do in that society was to have them pay their debt back to the person whom they wronged through labor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost a terrible blight on Christianity that people use the word slavery, because when they use slavery, they're trying to hang a chain around Christianity to say, see, you guys are pro-slavery.
Yeah.
And the Bible's slavery has nothing to do with racism. They may have enslaved like an entire community and said, you will take that town because they sacrificed children and they will serve you. But even in Judaism, every 7 years was the year of Jubilee where they had to free their slaves.
Every 49 years.
Well, yeah, every 49 years, but it was every 7 years was the year of Jubilee, where if their debts were paid.
The year of Jubilee was every 49 years.
Okay, I'm sorry, then it's not the year of Jubilee. It's some other celebration. It's every 7 years, because you couldn't enslave someone for that many years, anyways. You wouldn't want them. But so their whole thing was about payment, because there was no other way that you could get, like, if you didn't have money. Obviously, if you could pay money, you'd pay the fine. If you couldn't, then you owed that person whatever money you owed them, and they had monetary values for if you lost a daughter by an accident, if your ox gored someone else's daughter, or if your ox was stolen or slaughtered. There was a certain amount of money you owed them. If you couldn't pay it, you became their servant.
Yeah, and a lot of times people don't. people who aren't Christians generally don't know. A lot of the time, slaves, when they paid their debts off, or even at the year of Jubilee, they would take the option of being what's called a bond servant, which is they would take a nail, and this is how how they started earrings. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they would take a nail and they would hammer your ear to the doorpost of the house as a symbol that you have indentured yourself for life to this family. And it was a choice that you make yourself as a, quote, slave. Because you become family.
Yeah.
Right? They're not like beating you and treating you like cattle or treating you as inhumans or raping you. You know, I mean, there were very specific rules about how you treat your slaves in the Bible, and you're to treat them well. You're to treat them as family. And when you're living with this family for so many years and you've, you know, grown to love them, you know, a lot of people would just become that's why we call ourselves bond servants of Christ. We have chosen to be the slaves of Christ as in a family unit.
And people back then, they didn't have the options like today. You'd go like, well, why don't you free your slave? So he can go start his YouTube channel and make $400,000 a year. If you didn't have like family connections, you know, sometimes being a bondservant was your best option.
Money. Money? Why are you talking about money?
Money.
I don't have any money. I'm broke. What?
Give me your money.
Hugh Jazz for $2. What do y'all think of the biblical stuff in Brand? I think Antonio is playing, you know, playing with the mythology as he's playing with theology as mythology.
Yeah, which by the way, I do a lot of also.
So, but I haven't.
It's not biblical per se, though. He's using Bible characters or Bible names and characters. It doesn't make it biblical.
Oh, that's what Ethan was talking about. Was you? I have a page in the Meg where a great white shark is jumping out of the water.
Yeah, I think he's gonna nail us on that on his show. So don't talk about it because we gotta drum up the controversy.
All right. Oh, you're giving me money. Thank you, Jojo.
Hey, that's generous.
And now you're taking it back?
Most kids only take money from dad. Wow. That's ironic.
Let me see. Yay, first question. What book of the Old and New Testament would you suggest a new believer read first? New Testament, I would tell you to read one of the Gospels, probably Matthew. Old Testament, I'd tell you to read Genesis. I love Genesis.
Yeah, I love Genesis too. I would go with either of those. So any of the Gospels work, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, for different reasons. John is usually the beginner's overview that people give them. Matthew's like a more robust John. But the New Testament, I like almost every book in the New Testament more than most books in the Old Testament, just because it's more the theology you're looking for. If you're looking for kind of what Christian,
if you're looking for theology over like the story of the gospel, I would go with Romans.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, but even Romans, you know, disconnected from that Christ story. So Christ story is like the prequel. The Gospels are the prequel.
Yeah.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Everything else comes out of that. But I would say John, I like a lot. And then Old Testament, I agree. I've read Genesis more than most other Old Testament books. But
if you just want a really fun, awesome stories book, Joshua.
See, and I go with Job. Like I think that's one of the wisest books ever made. I think. Yeah,
but Job is nowhere near as fun as Joshua.
I agree. I agree. I think Ecclesiastes is one of the wisest books I've ever read, and of course the Proverbs. I think those three are my top go-tos in the Old Testament. Proverbs is great for like,
Yeah.
if you want a daily fortune cookie of wisdom, go read Proverbs and you'll go, there's no way this was made up by a man. It is so full of just wisdom. It is as true today as when it was written, or was it 2,500 years ago or whenever it was. It's amazing.
Yeah. It is better to live on the rooftops than with a wicked and vengeful woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man, that's true. That's true.
Absolutely. I mean, no one could have figured that out.
Yeah.
That particular one.
That never changes, man.
All right, let's see. Should I get my Bible ready? I'm sure it would help because you could correct us.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity.
Jeez, could everybody please smash that like button? And if your YouTube is not connected to your Twitter, just go share it out on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. I mean, we only have 23 people in here. This is crazy.
I'll do it. Hold on one second. Where's your, did you post this on Twitter?
Well, I would have thought it would have gone up as a notification, but apparently we're having that issue with YouTube and notifications. So,
yeah, you got flagged.
I don't know. Wouldn't they give me a notification of that?
Yeah, I would think so. You've been depersoned. Cross-examinations live 16 seconds ago. It was just 16 seconds ago that it went up on Twitter. So maybe you had a connection problem or something. I'll retweet this right now.
Q says, whoa, there's a lizard right next to me.
Hey, fence whip. I'm on with...
So biblical in the sense of how we look at Greek myths such as Zeus and Kratos. That neat. Yeah, because I don't know. I don't think Antonio is a believer, is he?
He's told me he's a believer. Yeah.
Okay.
I take people at their word, as you know. I mean, I'll give you an example. I have, but because he's a believer, it doesn't mean that he's using those biblical names in a way that is biblical. So I've got in Bigfoot Bill, I've got Zeus and Poseidon in it, you know,
right?
And Hades is in it. So, but I'm not, you know, I'm not into Roman pagan gods. I'm not. It's not an advocacy for it. You know, it's using. You can use Bible characters as literature also, and or historical characters. You know.
Yeah, man, flies are killing me. P Money, what is the most Christian book you've read other than the Bible? Example: C.S. Lewis. For me, ironically, it's the Kingdom Come graphic novel.
Huh. What's that one?
Kingdom Come?
Yeah.
Oh, that's like the Revelation
of
the DC Universe by Alex Ross and who wrote that? Kurt Busiek? Did you write that?
Alex Ross did that? Ooh.
Yeah.
The most biblical book? I mean, if it's not the Bible, then it's kind of all over the place. It's usually the Wild West of commentary and all that.
Mere Christianity.
I would say, I would think Chronicles of Narnia is the salvation story, very well written in literature. I would say Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is about the epic of the symbols in it are so Christian, and it's very deliberately so that he did it. You know what I mean? So as soon as you get out of the Bible, I'm going, well, what literature describes what's happening in there of giant cataclysmic salvation events? Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia, I would say.
See, you're going to fiction rather than something like Mere Christianity or More Than a Carpenter.
So I would say More Than a Carpenter and Mere Christianity are more nail on the head, really talking about the theology in the Bible, like totally on topic. But the reason why those other guys wrote literature is because they said that life is not like just reading a theology book. You're experiencing a story. You have a sense that you're a character on a stage. God is the author and a writer. And so they used story to tell a story that feels often more real than a dry theology book, because theology is all goes on in the mind, whereas stories, it brings in your emotion, it puts skin on things, it brings character in it, and is like a different kind of apologetic.
Right. Yeah. Let me think. If you go outside of Tolkien or Lewis, gosh, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
Pilgrim's Progress?
Yeah, Pilgrim's Progress is good. I mean, Dante's Inferno. These things they're fiction, but they're
allegorical.
Yeah, there's incredible teaching in it. I mean, the Screw Tape Letters is just amazing. And it's told from the point of view of a demon where C.S. Lewis has flipped all the theology. So instead of something being good, it's bad. So from a demon's point of view, every time he talks about something bad happening, he's talking about something we consider good. Every time he's talking about something good happening, he's talking about something that we consider bad. And it will turn your head into a knot by the end. It's amazing.
Yeah, I had once upon a time started a project with a friend of mine called The Gospel According to Satan.
Yeah.
And it was the biblical story. All of the facts are right.
Yeah.
Right. All of the facts are right. But it's told from Satan's point of view. And then when you get to the crucifixion, he's in triumph, right? He thinks he's won.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And then
like this is the happy
resurrected.
Ending. This is the happy ending of the story. Yeah. I always wanted to do the Screw Tape debates on my channel. So if you guys don't subscribe, go to Doug TenNapel on YouTube. But I always wanted to do the Screw Tape debates where I bring on an atheist and I bring on a Christian and make them argue each other's point. So I'd like bring on a Muslim and a Jehovah's Witness and have them only advocate for the other person's position as best they can.
You should have a Muslim and a Mormon, because they each got their holy writ from an angel of light.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So I also wanted to do evolution versus creationism and have them argue each other's point, because my theory is that if I went to argue any atheist, I could make better atheistic arguments than they can, and certainly better Christian arguments than they could.
Yeah, because you know best which ones have the power to cast doubt.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I know well, and I don't think they're very well. Anyone I've argued with who are anti-Christianity or creationism or anything are really well versed in what they're arguing against.
Generally speaking, no, they're just indoctrinated by the education system and media.
My general opinion, yes.
It is 100%. Well, maybe 99% of media and entertainment and education is pushing this narrative and refusing to even offer one iota of evidence against, right?
Yeah, and it's to a point that you can't know what's true. Like people can say, oh, well, we all know the earth is X 100 million years old. I'm going, well, how do you know that? Tell me about your experiences in archaeology. They didn't crack one book. Meanwhile, I'm reading all these papers by archaeologists on why they believe the earth is 180, however many billion years old. And I'm going, oh, this doesn't make sense. So it's very rare that you get on, especially on Twitter, when you see me just throw bombs at evolution. The people who argue against me, I can tell they know so little about actual evolution by the defenses they give that they're not even worth, half of them aren't worth responding to. So I just crack jokes.
Yeah. Have you ever read Michael Behe?
Yeah.
God dang it, you've read everything, man.
Yeah, well,
I can't bring up a book you haven't read.
Yeah. Michael Behe's that's a pretty easy one because he really is kind of the father of microbiology and getting into the cell and all that. So that is a very important book.
Darwin's Black Box.
Yeah, Darwin's Black Box, which is fantastic. Darwin's Black Box, and his other one was, I think it's called The Edge of Evolution. I think called The Edge of Evolution. His theory in Darwin's Black Box, which is fascinating, is he actually studied the malaria virus in people's cells, in the cells of its victims, right? Because what he's looking for, evolution's claim is that cells mutate, right? So down at the DNA level, a little switch doesn't copyright, which happens. It's not common, but it happens.
Right. It's like 1 in 10,000.
Yeah. So the first thing he's asking is, first of all, how common is it? Because for animals to account for the amount of changes that it would take,
yeah,
for us to evolve eyes and bat wings and huge complex superstructures full of millions of different kinds of cells, all coming from the same DNA programming, there'd be a ton of
self-correcting program, by the way.
Yeah. So it'd have to be a ton of mutations happening to account for the variety. Yet, if there's too many mutations allowed within the cell, we would basically just be blobs because there would be no structure to it. It would not defend your actual structure. So what he finds is that mutations are very rare because we're such robust creatures that if it was that easy to mutate and for you to to change whole superstructures of your body, there wouldn't be structure to it, right? It would be just constantly in question and constantly moving around. That is, you'd be susceptible to so many more diseases, so many more deformities, and so many more mutations. So it's amazing that we, in general, are held together so well.
Yeah, it's why the ridiculous hopeful monster theory
that Stephen Jay Gould,
yeah, came into being, because you look at it just logistically. Yeah. There isn't enough time in the supposed history of the universe for life to have evolved.
Yeah, so that's the what is the Precambrian explosion. we only have like 0.1% of the animals that ever existed exist now. So back in our distant past, you have a huge amount of animals in the fossil record that no longer exist. Plants, trilobites, just like all these, every dinosaur, all these amazing species. They can't account for the amount of time it would take, first of all, for them to even happen. Second of all, they can't account for why they suddenly appear in the fossil record in that Precambrian explosion. And that's where Stephen Jay Gould came up with. So most of my arguments come from atheists. Well, most of my arguments against evolution are not made by creators.
Yeah. I have an argument against evolution using Star Wars cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, or and I used 2 quotes. I don't have them here, but I used 2 quotes from evolutionary archaeologists or biologists, because one of them said the conditions necessary for any particular species to become fossilized and entered into the fossil record are so rare that it is literally a miracle that any given species is found in the fossil record.
True.
That was one scientist. And the other one said that there have been so many varied species necessary to the evolutionary model that it is a miracle that, and both of these people use the word miracle, it is a miracle that any particular species has more than one copy of it in the dirt. Yeah. And then I go to the fossil record, which has 250,000, and this number has barely changed in the 20 years I've been making this argument. 250,000 fossil species exist in the fossil record. There are countless billions of fossils we have uncovered, yet we continue to find the same 250,000 fossil species. When we find a new species, like when we found Archaeopteryx, everyone was like, oh my gosh, there's a new species, blah, blah, blah. Then they went on and found like a couple dozen more copies of Archaeopteryx. Yeah. So I use the argument that, like, when you're collecting Star Wars cards, or nowadays, when you're collecting Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? At a certain point, it doesn't matter if you buy 1 million different Yu-Gi-Oh cards. You've got the whole set.
Yeah.
All you're gonna get is duplicates.
Yeah.
And I don't know of anything. There might be a couple, but where we only have one copy of it in the fossil record. And people give me crap for using Yu-Gi-Oh cards to just
you're going, yeah, but Yu-Gi-Oh cards really don't exist. So your god, the flying spaghetti monster. Like that's about as far as the argument goes. So okay. So anyways, Behe basically shows with that malaria gene and how rare it is that the mutations happen, why the malaria gene is his field of study as a microbiologist. Well, because every time one human being contracts malaria, and those malaria virus cells multiply, right? That's one thing that malaria can do well, is just like crazy multiply itself. Or it mutates that many of your actual cells. The actual number of trillions of cells that malaria affects is about equal to the total number of mammals that have ever lived. That's amazing. Think about it. The total number of mammals in every species and every generation that have ever lived. That's the amount of single cells that the malaria virus affects within the human body. So he can go and look at the actual number of mutations within the entire what is representative of the entire mammal record in one human victim of malaria. And as he counts the cells and looks at the number of mutations, there's nowhere near enough to account for all of these mammals, say, evolving into each other, the amount of changes it would take for all those processes to happen. So that's his big theory. That's the Darwin's black box theory. And he's got a number of great arguments in there. I find that very compelling, that it's actually a way that you can actually see how common does at least the malaria DNA change. And the malaria DNA virus in general, because of its lack of stability, mutates more, say, than human genes do. So you have something that is merely designed to mutate, to become resistant to all these ways to kill malaria. And it almost never creates new information. The only significant change they could find in the malaria virus is that it makes some people in Africa come down with sickle cell anemia. When they get sickle cell anemia, it's considered a benefit because they're less likely to get AIDS.
They're more likely to die of a stroke.
More likely to die of a stroke, about 1,000 times more likely. And that's the evolutionist example, the best example they have of evolution happening on Earth. I'm going, oh, so I guess it's false.
It's funny because I keep coming back to logistics, right? Because we only have a finite amount of time, even in their version of how old the Earth is and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't say you have a population of 1 million creatures of any call them, cats or whatever.
Yeah.
The mother species is already a successful species.
That's right.
So even if you had a individual, mutation in that given species, the daughter species could never overtake the successful parent species.
Oh, you mean because of strength?
Yeah, because it's already a successful species. So you're competing. I mean, you'd have to have like a rocket launcher or something. You'd have to be born with a machine gun to wipe out the parent species, but then you'd have nothing to procreate with.
Yeah, it does not make sense as a theory. The more you try, the more it breaks, and it is on shakier ground than ever.
Yeah,
the actual theory of evolution.
And that's why because I say, I was raised as believing all that stuff. I was raised as an agnostic, and it wasn't until I had taken my dog out of the fight because I didn't think it mattered that I could look at all this information objectively, and it really does just fall apart, you know. And my favorite people are like atheist scientists who somehow manage to look objectively at this stuff, and then because they became creationists, eventually they become Christians.
Yeah,
it's like the back roads, you know.
yeah. So I've got a great book for you called Heretics, Heretic, about a Darwinist, a evolutionist who became a creationist in science. That he's a biologist, and just the crud that he took, the crud storm that he went through, was
it's like
is telling. So, and he's saying, like, look, this lack of curiosity is anti-science. It actually shows that they're protecting philosophy and ideology, not good science.
Right.
So that's my thing. Is I want to know, just like everyone else wants to know, I hope, what really is out there. But given my experience with most evolutionists is they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So why am I, you know, why where's the big argument? It's all just peer pressure, name calling. The people who claim to believe it don't know it. All they know is that evangelicals are stupid. Creationism is anti-science.
Right.
And that we just deny this hard evidence sitting right in front of us, even though they can't come up with any of the evidence in any of the conversations I've had. They say things like, well, genes mutate to resist, you know, antibacteria. And I just go like, you don't know evolution, friend. I'm wasting my time.
Yeah. You've seen Expelled, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I mean, even like you're saying, just the people who are willing to say, hey, can we look at this for a second? They get tarred and feathered right out of the community they will
not let you publish. They won't let you conduct science. You probably won't get grants because it's considered anti-science. So I'm just saying, well, where are we going to get the good data then until science realizes that it's just going down this total wild goose chase, which I believe it is, for 150 years, and really a pre-modern, primitive, bad science theory with very little, if any, evidence.
Yeah. Ray Thulu for $10 says, viewing suggestion, an episode of Masterpiece Theater called God on Trial. It's about an actual jury convened by Jewish prisoners in Auschwitz to determine if God is guilty of breaking the covenant.
Oh, interesting.
That is interesting.
God on Trial, Masterpiece Theater. Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah. Rhaegar Targaryen says, read some new atheists like Richard Dawkins. Ugh, that guy.
Yeah. He's coming to Nashville and I want to go just to heckle him.
Back when I was an atheist years ago, they basically talk crap about creationists and people who ask questions. Yeah, Richard Dawkins is the most blindly freaking arrogant.
Yeah.
Man, I loved it. I loved him in Expelled when he just came off as such adult. Well, maybe cells climbed under the back of crystals and.
Yeah, you just realize they'll believe anything but, you know, anything's aliens, panspermia, you know, will do. Aliens seeded the planet. They'll believe in multiverse, just anything that has no evidence to it.
Oh my gosh, the multiverse concept
is just everywhere.
So for people who don't know, there are scientists who did come to this understanding that it's freaking literally, logistically, mathematically impossible for evolution to have existed. So they backtracked to the very beginning of the universe where they say that when the Big Bang happened, it created an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of possibilities. And we just happen to live in the one where the infinite impossibility of evolution actually happened.
Yeah. So I
And they're
tell
like,
them, I tell them,
that's how we know there's no God.
yeah. So I always tell them, no, actually, we live in the universe where evolution is false and Jesus rose from the dead. No, we're not in that universe. No. Oh man, I thought we were going to find some common ground here.
It's funny. They will grasp at any straw and worship that straw.
Yep. And so that's my part of my thing that gives me confidence in my Christianity is to see how hysterical and bad the arguments are by well-meaning but hardcore believing evolutionists and atheists. Is that becomes evidence to me that something else is going on. It would really freak me out if they were very calm, methodical, did not take shots at evangelicals, but just simply said, I disagree. But they don't. There's always like insult and vitriol. Like every time Bill Nye's on, we don't have to believe in faith anymore because everyone knows that faith is what you do when you don't know something or something, just like some dumb thing like that. That actually gives my faith a lot more confidence because I see how fraudulent her adversaries are. I'm looking for a decent adversary to Christianity before it has weight with me, I would say.
Yeah, Real Comic Stack says everyone chooses to have faith in something. That is right. The problem you get with the hardcore adherents is they accuse us of believing the God of the Gaps theory, but they are unwilling to say they don't know. Rather, they say we'll know eventually.
Yeah,
so their God is the future unknown.
Yeah, and they have faith. They have faith in materialism, that scientific study, we don't know the answer, but I have faith that one day we will know through testing and repeatable tests and all this stuff. And I'm going, oh, so you have faith in materialism. You just replace the word creationism with materialism. It's still an ism. They're going, no, mine's not an ism, mine's science. Oh, well, actually, there's a name for it. It's called scientism, where they believe that the only way that you can find true things is what is empirically demonstrated in a lab. That is also an ism.
Let's see. George Freeland says, faith is for the real world, where we have to act on secondhand information a good part of the time.
Sure.
That is true.
Because I don't have direct knowledge that there's a bottom of the ocean. Never been there.
Right.
I take it on faith.
I don't have direct knowledge that we actually have satellites in the sky because the Earth is a globe.
Yeah.
I take that on faith.
Yeah. Well, you've never been to the core of the moon. You never met George Washington. Now, those are natural events, so we tend to have an easier time having faith in those. And I'll admit that there are things that are easier to have faith in than others. But
what's interesting is the almost universal belief that the Earth is solid and is filled with magma and all that stuff. We've never gone more than 8 miles into the Earth.
Yeah.
But everyone believes this model. That's faith. I mean, may or may not be true. I certainly wouldn't hinge my salvation on it because no one's been more than 8 miles down.
Yeah. But you can know by how some things work. But probably more in the supernatural realm or in the non-physical realm would be things like mathematical abstractions are not testable. The idea, the number 4, the theory of number 4 can't be tested. There's no empirical proof that I love my wife. Though I know that more than any other truth in the world, I know I love my wife. But you can't see it. You can't weigh it. You cannot get a litmus test for how much you love your wife. You can look at how I act, but how I act is very different than how I love my wife. In fact, if you came to me in the peak of a heated argument with my wife, where you might think, oh, you must hate each other. There's evidence that you don't love each other. I go, no, no, no. I love this woman and I'd die for her more than anyone on the planet. So even when there's no external evidence, you can actually know in truth that you love your wife. So, so there are often the things that we actually believe the most, there's no empirical evidence for. Like if I can say, Republicans are, the GOP is a better party than the Democrats. I can't, there's no scientific test I can give for that. It's just a theory, but I believe it, pretty deeply. I believe it.
I think you can test that against economics.
Yeah, but then, but that's when, that's when the politics begin. So,
Brian the Observer says, it seems like they can't accept a being smarter than them and can't die. Brian, also, I did read later on that your wife's surgery did go well, so happy to hear that. God bless you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So then where does lava come from? I don't know. You could just as easily say the Earth is filled with water. Because
Earth's belly button.
Well, lava comes up out of the Earth, but water comes up out of the Earth. So why do we accept that the Earth is filled with magma, but not accept that it's just filled with water?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just saying we should remain open to the science. We can have our favorite theory.
Yeah.
I believe in an old Earth is my favorite theory. But if someone said, no, the Earth is young, it's 6,000 years old, that wouldn't surprise me.
Well, you've heard the theory, I can't remember who did it, who came up with it, but that the starting point of the universe is age 0.
Yeah.
The edge of the universe, like 18 billion years old, whatever, trillion years old. I don't know. Is it trillion? I don't even remember. And that because time is a physical property, there is a range of time depending on how far out into the universe you've gotten. So that we are technically in the 6,000 year range, or 6 to 10,000, whatever it is.
Yeah. And that Genesis is written from both God's point of view in one part and man's point of view in another. So to God, it would be a 24-hour day. But to man, the first 24 hours of the universe would be 100 million years old. Because of the nature of time. When time started out, 1 hour wasn't an hour. What we would, from God's point of view, what a 24-hour day was different than what we would experience. Look up Gerard, I think it's Gerard Schroeder or Schroeder. Gerard Schroeder is the physicist who has that theory. He's a Jew, and he's got, I think he's a rabbi even, but he is brilliant. He's got great lectures on it. And so his claim is always, the world was billions and billions of years old. But as far as if we measured time from our point of view, it would be, or from God's point of view, it would be 6,000 years old. So I'm just saying, look, that's yet another theory. There's just like hundreds of theories, and I'm open to all of them. I see no reason to say, no, it's definitive. It has to be this exact amount of time. I go, yeah, I'll lean that way. The science is compelling. We have 100 billion year old looking stars, not necessarily that age, but they look that way. So I don't think I'm being a jerk for believing, what I see. Or if I see a dinosaur in a fossil record, and I've heard creationists say the devil put those fossils there to deceive mankind. I go, well, that's one theory, but there might also have been actual dinosaurs walking around. Well,
there might be a reason why dragons are ubiquitous in every culture, every culture's history on the planet, because they saw them.
Yeah. So I don't believe in dragons, but it wouldn't surprise me if they existed. I don't believe in unicorns. It wouldn't surprise me if they existed. That's all I'm saying is.
Well, you believe in dinosaurs?
Yeah, but I believe that we have more evidence of dinosaurs than we do, say, looking at their nasal chambers to see if there was a way to breathe to create fire in a reptile.
Well, I mean, dragons weren't always about breathing fire. I mean, the dragon that Saint George killed was it was a small dragon, probably like the size of a
Komodo.
Well, I think it was bigger than that. But
I mean, I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if they did exist or didn't. So I don't have to stake out a claim and say, no, I believe George and the Dragon was a documentary, and so I am forced to believe that. Same thing.
I say it's the same reason it's the same argument with the flood, right? The flood is the single most documented global event in the history of the world.
Right.
But because scientists say the Earth is billions of years old, it can't have happened. But every culture on the Earth agrees that it happened.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing with dragons. They only came up with the word dinosaur 150 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So before they called them dinosaurs, they called them dragons, and there are reports of them all around the world. There are newspaper reports from England of them shooting, basically pterodactyls, killing the sheep, and they had to be hunted down. They had to be, wiped out because they were killing all the freaking sheep.
Yeah, yeah, all those pterodactyls. So that wouldn't surprise me. I'm just saying.
Right, but they wouldn't have called them pterodactyls. They'd have called them dragons.
Yeah, sure. Sky demon. Sure.
Sky demons. And what about the Thunderbird, right, in North America? So the Thunderbird is a large bird that flies ahead of storms where the pressure is higher.
Sure.
Right. So I don't know. Chuck Missile always says that pterodactyls couldn't fly in today's atmosphere, or at least as well, because it's not as dense as it was before the flood. But
it's not as dense. There's not enough resistance. But I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Because if you take the time to just out of curiosity go look at all of the dragon stories from around the world, and the dragon illustrations, and the dragon, carvings, and you're like, okay, people witnessed dinosaurs. Because I mean, look at the Ica stones. Oh my gosh, there's like thousands of carvings of man. It's like the Flintstones,
Yeah.
Triceratops and plesiosaurs and T-Rexes, and just drawings from ancient man. And there was one, I can't remember what it was, but there's I think it was a duck-billed dinosaur that some ancient person had drawn, and it drew it with this peculiar skin pattern, right? And all we'd ever seen from was the fossils, was the bones, right? And then they discovered when you get an impression of one, and it had that pattern on it, and they just discovered it like in the past couple of decades or something like that. So it's like somebody knew because somebody saw, right? Because we walked together. So
I don't know. I'm wide open to that theory. I don't know.
It's super interesting. I mean, that's why I spent so much time looking into it, because it's fun.
Yeah. But my thing is, most of my arguments against evolution are because of what I know about evolution, not because of what I believe in the Bible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so even if someone proved that dinosaurs didn't exist, that man and dinosaurs didn't walk together, it wouldn't bother me. I don't have my hat hanging on that, or all my faith hanging on that.
All right.
It's very speculative, and we should always be careful when we're speculating. I always try and tell people, like, hey, look, this is just me speculating. So,
well, yeah, anything. I speculate that George Washington was the first president of the United States. I can't prove it scientifically.
Right. Sure.
But that's why I think things like, historical documentation trump all of these theories, especially if they can be corroborated by other historical documentation,
Yeah, I agree. And there ought to be a humility when looking at these things. instead of just going in and just saying that's impossible. I believe almost anything is impossible, because you see, you know, science denied when Pangea was first proposed and that tectonic plates, you know, could move. That theory was denied for 100 years before it was finally accepted. That the Earth, that the countries split apart and shaped, you know, Africa and South America, that they fit together like a puzzle piece.
Oh yeah, scientists may be among the most religious zealots of their beliefs. I mean, yeah. it took what, like, I think it was like 50 years before the guy who discovered that washing your hands between operations
reduced germs
and saved people's lives. Yeah. And the scientific community back then was like, "You're out of your mind."
Yeah, tell us about those invisible germs.
TenNapel.
Well, I just posted, when we were doing all the Doug hand washing stuff, I just posted an article probably a month and a half ago when it first started, where it said that doctors realized that they just now passed a law where they have to wash their medical equipment. So think of all the surgeries they've conducted where they did not have a clean room. And they've had like outbreaks of mass staph infections in hospitals and stuff. I'm going, this is only just now a law when we've discovered like germ theory forever ago. And they're just now saying that. So what happened was they would wash all the instruments, right? Like they'd wash a scalpel, obviously, and they'd throw away the dirty needles and stuff where blood splattered and stuff. But they didn't do things like sterilize the wheels on the cart. That was no one's job. And now it's like the law that you will like sterilize the bottom of the operating table and things that are just like common sense. So we're very wrong. We get things very wrong, grossly wrong.
Yeah. No, it just seems like things that are just so common sense now, science fought tooth and nail.
Yeah. Yeah, so
right.
when I see the resistance against creationism, that's no surprise. That's kind of common for science to do.
Well, brother, I promised you an hour. I think we're about there.
Oh, I got a ton of work done, man. If there's more questions, I can stick around. I'm just drawing.
Well, I have that left on my computer, so.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me see. Have they gotten into an argument over whether or not rhinos are unicorns yet? Oh, they're talking about washing hands. Awesome. LOL.
Yay. Hand washing. Hand washing is a myth.
Right.
Hand washing.
Doug is anti-science. In the same context of the flood, you guys should check out The Star of Bethlehem, which is a documentary that shows how the star that the wise men followed was also an astrological event.
Yeah, I've seen
that
theory anyway. I don't know if it was that documentary, but I've seen that theory. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll do this until my battery is at like 5%, so it doesn't, so I can log out. Because if I don't log out, it'll just keep going. Then you'll be here by yourself. It's not in dispute that George Washington was the first president, is it? Rhaegar Targaryen asked. And then someone responds, George Freeland responds, John Hanson was the first president if you count the Continental Congress under the Articles of Confederation. And wasn't he black? John Hanson was a black man, right?
I have no idea. That's why they called him handsome. I don't know.
Hanson.
I don't know. I'm so history ignorant. It's sad.
I can only accept that man and dinos were alive at the same time if that includes Raquel Welch's fur bikini. I could accept that.
Yeah.
Hello.
Tell
your Raquel Welch story.
Okay, Raquel Welch. I went to this little tiny Reformed church in Glendale one day, and just my friend was preaching, Chris Neiswanger. In fact, I just did a show with Chris Neiswanger on my show a few days ago. But Chris, he was the preacher there. And I mean, like maybe 8, 12 people in the audience. And there in the back row is Raquel Welch. This was just like in 2011, probably 2011. And after church, I just went straight to her. Whoosh, there you go. You in that fur bikini. I go, it's part of why I got into Ray Harryhausen, who did the stop motion dinosaurs in that movie, which became my career on the Neverhood video game, was stop motion. So it's like, that is the first movie I remember. And I go, and when I was a kid, I kind of fell in love with you. And she was like, she looked, well, she wanted to be anywhere else but there. But it was beyond just like normal obnoxious thing. It was like something was kind of wrong with her. I don't want to say it, but it was just kind of like sketchy a little bit. So I went, okay, bye. She walked out. I honestly, I don't think she said a word. I think she stared at me. Like, oh, talking to the wrong person. Sorry. I mean, it was Raquel Welch, but and she did look stunning.
Yeah, I did. Crazy. How old is she now? Like 80?
She didn't look. She wasn't 80, but yeah, like really stretched out. You know, facial reconstruction, but looked great. I mean, probably, yeah. I would guess late 70s.
Matt V says, she was wondering, where is my security?
Yeah, exactly. It was like
security. There's a giant approaching.
Yeah. So it's just like that movie. This guy, and he even walks with a strobe, like all that, those old stop motion movies.
And she's like 5'5" or something, isn't she? She's not tall. Is she?
I don't know about that short, but I don't remember her being. I just remember her wearing a ginormous hat. It was like a canopy, you know. It was huge, a huge hat, beautiful woman hat. So that's my story. But yeah.
Sketch says Doug's church talk is so dirty.
Trash talk.
Oh man. Yes, he was black. Our first president was black, not that white fella we all have on our money. That would be great if we like got him on some money and then revive that, you know. By a black man.
By a black man, yeah. Sure. Give him
let's see.
Give it back to him. They're gonna do like the Midnight Oil. It belongs to them.
Let's give it back. Joshua Hughes just reminds you, Doug, that it's not a placebo, Dirty Doug.
Dude, you are really breaking up on me. I can barely hear you. It's like ow.
Oh, really? Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap this up then, because I'm down to about 12%, anyways. So, thanks for being here. Thank you, everyone, for coming to another episode of Cross Examinations with our very special guest, Doug TenNapel.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. This was really fun.
Yeah, I love doing this.
Yeah.
I like doing it more conversationally than just doing it on my own. But I'll do it on my own.
You need someone to talk against, or talk with, just so you're not just doing soliloquies, or you're just and even just to read chats. I mean, usually if I wasn't working, I could help read a chat, but you know.
Yeah. Oh, Antonio Malpica for $5 says, Doug, if a producer says they're going to review their notes on my pitch and see if this something they can pursue, is that usually a no?
Repeat the last sentence, please.
And see if this is something they can pursue. Is that usually a no?
Is that usually a no? No, that's usually a really good sign, because they don't go that far with stuff they're not interested. It's too easy to say no, and they get hundreds of pitches, so they say no to them all the time. If they're saying they want to review it, they mean they want to review. They want to do what they say. It's too easy to say no.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
All right. With that, everybody, please do like, do subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. Make sure it's still rung, because YouTube is being really screwy nowadays. Let's see. Please don't forget Gary Shipman's sketchbook ends today, so go to Indiegogo and check that out. And then while you're at Indiegogo, check out Lone Star, Heart of the Hero, and Bigfoot Bill from Doug TenNapel. That said, thank you all for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section down below, and I will get to them on Monday. Tomorrow's Sunday. Won't be here. So God bless you all. God bless you, Doug. Thank you for being here.
God bless you, brother. Great having me on. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Aloha.
Aloha.